And happy Wednesday to the world out there, and to some of the people out there, happy Thursday. If you're listening to this podcast on a Saturday, happy Saturday, everyone.
Yeah, whatever day it is, happy that day to you.
Happy existence to you.
There you go. See, we're giving you all kinds of love, all kinds of opportunity to celebrate whatever day it is that you listen to the podcast. Gentlemen, how's it going?
It's interesting.
It's weird doing a podcast. We record Wednesdays, Seattle time, even though we're not all in Seattle. And there was a Thursday night game, like less than 24 hours later, and we had a lot of time to dwell on that game. I mean, have any of you gone back and looked at that game? Highlights, clippings, scores?
I haven't looked at anything.
I usually do, and I didn't this time.
What? So
I usually watch the game a few times, and I just couldn't do it.
What's the obvious reason why you didn't rewatch that game or highlights or anything?
I mean, with everything else going on, my sanity is tenuous at best anyway. So I'm trying to keep my. I'm taking Marshawn's advice, and I'm keeping care of my mentals.
Take care of that chicken too. Yeah.
I just I don't need the. There's limited takeaways from it. There's a lot of times like you lose and you know what you can learn from it and whatnot and so forth. In this game, what did we learn? We learned that Russ got hurt and it wasn't from being a mobile quarterback. It was in the pocket, which just shows that Steve Young was correct. Steve Young always said like people who criticized or like were nervous about running quarterbacks getting hurt like had it reversed. He was always convinced that being in the pocket was a much more dangerous place. And so after 10 years, Russ finally gets hurt on a very innocuous passing play from the pocket. So there's this little takeaway from me. I don't know. I just want to move on.
I mean, it's weeks. The game happened week 6 or week 5. Sorry. We're entering week 6. Yeah, I mean, like, we've had bad losses before, but we've never had a loss like this because I definitely was excited for this game. I was hyped for Thursday Night Football. I thought we came out really well. Like, we should have had a 14-3 lead. I thought the defense looked totally different. Matt Stafford looked really pedestrian. Like, I thought that they looked like the team as a whole. I think I wrote this to you. I wrote this on the forum, hawkscast.net. I wrote this on Discord. I wrote this all over the place. I wrote that the Rams looked tight. They were making mistakes that I thought that a team wouldn't have made if they were ready for the moment. And I thought in that first half, the moment was too big for the Rams. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone on that. The silence speaks volumes.
I don't know. Is that what you think?
I don't know. I don't know nothing.
I mean, I fully understand that it's hard to think about what happened in the first half when so much happened in the second half and not in like a great, fun, let's talk about it kind of way. But that's I think to me what makes that game so much worse. Not only do you lose Russ, and that opens a whole like Pandora's box of emotions, opinions, and thoughts, and we'll talk about in topic number 1. But I thought the Seahawks were really competitive. There were so many instances in that game where it felt like they had the chance to take control. It looked like they were running lanes for Alex Collins. It looked like DK Metcalf was taking advantage of the secondary, and Russ was challenging Jalen Ramsey, and I thought both receivers were doing well. You know, I think the holding call on that touchdown play against Dwayne Brown was very, very poor. Like, it looked like basically the defender like wrapped himself into Dwayne Brown more so than Dwayne Brown wrapping him up and getting the hold. And maybe that's a vet savvy move, and Dwayne Brown has to be better. But it was, and then you missed the field goal. Yeah, that was a rough end of the first half, and then the second half it was just, there were positives, but I think to Ross's point, there was just a lot that you really don't want to relive or rehash or go over again.
Yeah, I didn't even. I thought about it watching highlights because there was some good plays, there were some things worth watching, and then I just was like, I can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, did any of you think that it was going to be that bad of an injury? Because Matt Stafford, early in the game, he hurt his throwing finger as well, but it wasn't obviously the same injury. And, there are questions about his throwing, but...
I mean, there's always... especially fingers. Like, lots of big injuries, like knees and ankles and thighs and stuff like that. I kind of take a little pride in my ability to diagnose immediately watching the film. With a finger, first of all, you don't get a good view. You don't get the close-ups. And it's all internal stuff, so it's... I didn't think it was going to be that bad at first, but it's hard to know, right? I mean, and the hand didn't come down on a helmet, so I don't think I suspect it was that bad. The only thing that gave me pause before they announced the whole thing, but in between that, they showed one still photo where maybe only 5 or 10 minutes after he hit his finger, it was already swollen up to about twice the size of the neighboring fingers.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not good. I mean, I've had a lot of finger injuries myself, especially the last couple of years in my dodgeball days. A lot of finger jamming going on, and
finger jams are the worst.
Straining my fingers, but I've never had a finger swell up to double its size inside like 5 minutes. That was ridiculous.
He didn't. To me, I was optimistic because it didn't look to me like he was in any pain, and he was throwing the ball. You know what I mean? It looked like he basically he was like, "I'm going back in. I'm not coming out of this game." But then obviously it didn't happen.
Yeah. I don't think it was about the pain. He's manly. And I don't think it was about the pain. I think like you said, he was on the sidelines. He was throwing the ball back and forth. He wanted to go back in, and he didn't. And it wasn't the pain. I felt like he realized as he was throwing the ball, like it was a mechanical issue. He wasn't able to control the ball, and so he couldn't play.
Right.
So that's the most frustrating thing. Like if you're hurt, and like you feel the pain, like you can't get out of the field. That's a different level of frustration though. When like you're willing and you can play through the pain, but literally your body won't obey your commands. I think it's a special kind of frustration.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I remember when Matt Hasselbeck hurt his non-throwing hand. And initially, everyone's like, "Oh, this is really going to impact the running game." And at least, I don't play quarterback, so I didn't understand it. But it's you hand off with the non-throwing hand, and that was what was going to really mess up Matt Hasselbeck and the offense. This is like a totally different kind of injury, as you were alluding to, Ross. Where if you don't have the mechanics to do what you need to do, that really takes out so much of why Russell Wilson is as amazing as he is. Everyone knows how short he is, but one of the things that I remember when Russ came out was talking about the size of his hands. He has like abnormally large hands for someone his size. They're like apparently the size of someone who's like 6'4", 6'5" size hands, but he's 5'10" and like 3/4.
Yeah, you know what that means.
You know what that means? Big gloves.
Big, huge mother of God gloves. Yeah.
That's what Sierra likes. She likes them big gloves.
So does OJ.
OJ wants the biggest gloves, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, so the Seahawks enter a whole new world as Russell Wilson will not be starting for the Seahawks since 2011, before he wasn't even on the team. Some fans will relish seeing what a non-Russ-led team will look like, while other fans assume that our team will be even worse, as Russ was the only one keeping us afloat. Either way, someone will be right and someone will be wrong. As the Seahawks now go to Pittsburgh for Sunday Night Football, this is the second of 3 straight primetime games for the Seahawks. We're going to see what a Geno Smith-led Seahawks team looks like. This is a Hawkscast podcast, hawkscast.net podcast. Zeb, we're going to go topic number 1. We're going to go straight into it. Why is there optimism with Russell Wilson going to miss 4+ weeks? It's a huge spectrum of opinions, but I'm not hearing a lot of doom and gloom. I'm hearing a lot of positives. Like, why are people so optimistic about Russell Wilson not being the quarterback for the Seahawks in a very long time?
Well, first, I think that not everybody is optimistic. There's a certain type of person that's optimistic about this. I think the average fan is probably much less optimistic than the kind of person that delves into the X's and O's and, deeper into the game than the average fan. And I think those people are optimistic because there's a pretty general consensus that this offense doesn't necessarily operate to its highest ability because of a few little things that Russell is not very good at or unwilling to do, maybe some would say. We've talked about this stuff before, his struggles with the 2 high safeties and his unwillingness to maybe take a lesser play, check down, because he's always going for the big play. He wants to always score as quickly as possible, it seems like. And I think that people believe that his method of playing like that hinders the offense. It gets us out of rhythm. As we've seen this year in particular, lots of 3-and-outs. Doesn't give the defense time to rest. All these factors that come into play, that come into effect because of the way the offense is operating. So I think these people believe that Geno Smith is going to run the offense maybe closer to the way it's designed, and because of that, we're going to see more sustained drives. It's not going to be all bang or bust every time, giving the defense a chance to rest. And I think that the optimism comes from that thought. Now, whether or not that all turns out to be the case obviously remains to be seen. I have a gut feeling that we're going to see that out of Geno, and it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be cool for a bit, but there's going to be moments and points where we remember that Russell Wilson is kind of magic, and Geno Smith, God love him, I don't think is very magic. I think Geno has a pretty good skill set, but he's been consistently non-clutch during his playing years. Now, remember, it's been a long time since Geno's played. And I have this feeling we're going to see good. We're going to see some of those things people want to see, but ultimately what we're going to see is that Geno Smith is not an NFL winning quarterback. And I think before too long, people are going to be very happy to see Russell Wilson come back.
So if you were talking to one of those fans on either side, you can pick, what would you tell them? Hey, these are the things that the Seahawks need to do. This is why you should be looking forward to these games, and this is how we're going to win. Like, if you were going to pump someone up, if you were going to hype them up, what would you talk about? Would you focus on that more of a scripted, what Shane Waldron wants offense? Like, would you lean towards like, hey, maybe the defense going to get some rest? How would you build up someone's optimism for these upcoming games?
Well, yeah, you can count me among the optimistic to a certain degree. More than anything, I'm a little bit excited about the unknown. It's been a long time since we haven't had Russell Wilson, so I'm interested and excited to see what it's going to look like. I do think it's going to happen. I do believe that if we can have Geno play mistake-free football, not taking a lot of chances, I do think we're going to see some of that stuff, and it's going to have a net positive effect. I just worry that, as we saw in the last game, Geno's the kind of guy who's going to look great, and then he's going to throw that interception at the exact wrong moment, and ultimately, it's going to lead to losses. But at the same time, I do. If we can avoid those moments, I think this team has a chance to win some games under Geno. So I think the people who are optimistic and excited have well enough reason to be that way.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Ross, we're clearing the floor. Dance floor is open. Why is there optimism with Russell Wilson missing 4+ weeks?
I don't know if it's optimism. I think it's more like curiosity. I mean, it's strangely non-negative.
Right?
I mean, everywhere I go, it's you. I mean, like when Matt Hasselbeck would get hurt and he'd be out for a couple games, and then it would be like Seneca Wallace or Clipboard Jesus or whatever. Like they'd be like feelings and oh god, and maybe that's that, and it was completely justified. I mean, not just because Hasselbeck was way better than whoever else was taking his place as a quarterback, but also like Holmgren's particular offense, you needed timing and it was intricate, and can't just come in there and play it. But it's interesting. I mentioned offline, like even people who are like rah Russell Wilson, he's the best thing since Moses or something. They don't seem to be. I mean, some of those people had already given up on the season, so it's just about how interesting the season could look, I guess. But if there is optimism or there's curiosity, it's we finally get to find out some stuff. There's the debate that's raised the last couple of years in particular. Is it all about Russell Wilson or is it all about Pete Carroll? Why have we been successful for 10 years? And you've never had a chance to know. Now, I would argue still not going to know now because they spent the offseason building a team around Russell Wilson more this year more than ever before. And now you take Russell Wilson out, so it's only Pete Carroll and go, okay, well, how does Pete Carroll do? Well, that's not fair. Like, he didn't plan for this moment. But, I mean, maybe we can glean some information. I suspect with Geno in there that we're going to go back to what Pete Carroll thinks is his brand of football and his style of winning football. I think we're going to see some more running. I think it's not going to be as much about tempo. It's going to be more about ball control. We have the worst time of possession in the league right now. And I don't think Pete Carroll thinks that with Geno Smith back there, it's even tenable to try to win if we're only going to have the ball for 23 minutes. Like, yeah, we're not going to have. He's got an arm, but he doesn't have quite the touch on the deep ball. So there's going to be fewer explosive plays. If we're going to win with Geno, it's going to have to be under. It's going to have to be under Pete Carroll's old philosophy. And isn't it going to be interesting if we win, say, 2 of 3 games? With that strategy, with ball control, with whatever, it shouldn't be a quarterback controversy. Russell Wilson is a better quarterback. But it will tell you that, hey, that's not the only way to win. And even if you're a better quarterback, but if you insist on making a quarterback-centric team, that's difficult to play. I mean, I've said this before. I think it's very, very difficult and really, really foolish for Russell Wilson to wanting to be the passing champion thing. Because if you're building the team that way, and that's what you're all about, you're competing with all the other teams that want to build that way. So everybody wants those same wide receivers. Everybody wants the same left tackle. And only one team gets each one. So we may see some validation of Pete Carroll's philosophy, or the opposite. We could see Pete Carroll try to run his offense, and it completely doesn't work. And we're like, yeah, it's with Geno Smith, but we can see it wouldn't work anyway. So maybe we find out that, maybe we see the future of the Seahawks exposed in the next, they said 6 to 8 weeks. There's no way that happens. Russ is coming back after 3 games, right? Then you get the bye. No, it's not. I mean, I really, like, we have a bye in there, right? So
we have the bye.
We have 3 games. So with his bubbles, his magic bubbles,
nano bubbles,
and his praying, because of course God cares about football, and he's particularly involved in Russell Wilson's career. He really wants Russell personally to succeed. Doesn't really care about starving people, but anyway. So I mean, I think Russell Wilson will be back after just 3 games missed. That's my bet. That's my prediction. You can write that down. But it's going to be really interesting, isn't it? We're going to get to see a chance to see things we haven't seen for years and years and years. it's not really going to settle any debates. It's going to be almost maybe a litmus test. You see what you want to see out of what's coming up, but also like Zeb said, like maybe we're going to see also a little bit of maybe Russ really does resist throwing the slants. Maybe he really does have problems throwing to the middle. Maybe it's not just play calling or whatever. So I'm curious about where we're gonna. If the season's lost, then I kind of actually want it to go longer. I want a real sample size. I wouldn't mind 6 weeks of non-Russ if we just to see how things could work or don't look, and then we can make. That's not a pro or negative Russell statement. That's just objectively what does the team look like without him. Now, should I eat crow for the past 3 years of what the stuff I've said? Or should we start to admit there's more than one way to build a football team? And that maybe Pete Carroll's his version of analytics actually has something to it. Maybe it is all about turnovers and keeping the ball in your hand and whatever. I mean, it's going to be hard because we don't got a defense, but, we'll see.
Yeah, Russ, you kind of allude to what my concern is, and Zeb, you also talked about it as well. Everyone's obviously and rightfully focused on Russell Wilson. But the problem that I see is it's not just quarterback. It is our defense and our running game. We have no running game. Alex Collins looked like he could have been the guy in San Francisco. He played well. He looked like he was decent in the Minnesota game, but didn't get any touches. He got like one. In this game, they tried to run with Alex Collins, and it just did not look good. I thought the offensive line played actually pretty well. Any of the sacks that Russ took, they were not on Russell Wilson. That's because coverage was good downfield, and Russ didn't throw the ball away. I feel that there's optimism for Russell Wilson for the same reasons that you both have kind of talked about. It's the unknown. I think people are a little bit tired of the Seahawks winning 10-plus games and then not going far enough into the playoffs. This is the perfect opportunity for people to come out and say, I was right. Which side of I was right will definitely depend on how the team does as this season progresses. But I think that unknown, because we've never had to really think about this. Like, backup quarterback was always a throwaway for the Seahawks for 8 of the past 10 years, easily. Like, there was never any question of who was going to start this game. And Russ's consistency and the fact that he wants to play, he wants to start in these games. He doesn't even want to give his garbage time snaps to his backup. He wants to play. I definitely thought that he was going to play in the next game because he wants to have that Iron Man streak. He wants to be like that Brett Favre and set the record for most consecutive starts made as a quarterback. But I feel like there's so many things that we don't talk about that are outside of the quarterback, because Russ has had a really great year. He had his first turnover against Jalen Ramsey, who made a really great play, but he was leading the NFL in quarterback rating, which is not a perfect stat. There's obviously flaws to Russ's game that don't show up in quarterback rating. And if I were to rank where our problems were and why the Seahawks are 2-3, Russ isn't at the highest of the list. There are a lot more problems that I would say that are, going to be there. And I think Russ definitely compensates for a lot of those deficiencies. I know those deficiencies are going to be totally exposed. I don't know how the defense is going to get better. Are they going to try and run the ball to control the clock more? Is Geno going to rely on shorter intermediate passes down the middle, which is what we saw him do? So instead of going for less explosive plays, on 3rd and short, they're going to look for the quick out route. They're going to look for that quick hitch. They're going to find the tight end in the middle of the field. They'll run a draw play, a screen play. Those are unknowns that I think people are excited for. But we still don't have a great defense. We haven't seen anything close to a consistent running game. Not having Russell Wilson is going to be a problem. But the problems that have led to the Seahawks being 2-3, they're still there. And that's what I feel that people have kind of forgotten about. People are willing to entertain the idea of what a Geno Smith-led team is, but they have forgotten the problems with the defense. They've forgotten problems with our running game. And Jason Myers has not been great this year. He's missed a field goal. He's missed a point after. The point after, that could have won us the game against Tennessee. Going into halftime up 10-3 is much different than going into halftime at 7-3. Like 7-3 going into halftime, that felt like a loss. So I feel like there's all these questions, and I get people are focused on the quarterback, but our issues are beyond who is going to be throwing the ball. It's who's he handing off to, and when he's off the field, what are we going to see? So I feel like those are the things that are still pressing, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next topic. But I do get why people are excited, you know. It's the unknown. I'm not looking forward to that, though. I'm obviously going to be invested. It will be fun to find out, but I'm not excited that we are going to find out, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't like the idea that this team is only successful or only not successful because of the way Russell Wilson plays. You know what I mean? And I think obviously a lot is on the quarterback. There's no question about that. But I would like to see what it's like when the quarterback isn't asked to do so much, and see how that affects the other aspects of the game.
Yeah. Final thoughts on Russell Wilson and the fact that we're not going to see him on the field.
Do you feel like you could write a short thesis paper now on mallet finger? Like, how much did you research mallet?
I definitely was doing a lot of internet researching on Twitter. My source was Michael Shandugar of The Athletic. He wrote a lot. He talked a lot about it. What is interesting is Russ had two injuries, actually. So one was mallet finger, and the other was a ligament damage, which is why the surgery didn't go well, and he had to put pins in or screws, I think, in his finger instead of pins. Yep. Pins would have been easier to heal or faster to heal. One last thing about Russell Wilson. Have you seen pictures of him at practice?
I have not. I've heard he was at practice.
Okay.
I heard Clayton talking about it.
So Zeb, have you paid attention at all to pictures of Russ at practice?
No, I've only seen one.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure what the deal is.
So earlier in the week, Russ was at practice, and he was wearing like a big heavy coat because it's fall in Seattle, and they're outside practicing. He doesn't have a number 3 jersey on. He's just wearing a jacket, Seahawks gear, and he's got his hand wrapped up. Today, Russ was wearing a number 3 red jersey. Hand is still panged up, but he was wearing football gear. I thought that was interesting, and I attribute that to just Russ wanting to be a part of the team. Like, that is something that I will always give him credit for, no matter what you think about.
So what does that say about his future? I mean, like, if he's rushing to come back now, and if he's all in, and if he's I
don't know if I would say that he's like rushing to get back. I think that is him trying to feel like he's still a part of the team. Because
I mean, it's kind of the same thing. But the point is, like, it feels like this is the behavior of somebody that's actually still quite invested in Seattle.
Yes, that's the way that I would look at it as well. Because if he wasn't invested and he was like, all right, this is my time, Geno, take the wheel for a couple weeks. I'm going to show you guys what you're missing, but I'm ready to move on. He wouldn't be with the team. Like, I think that would be a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to topic number 2, and we're going to talk defense. Ross's favorite. So Ross, going to hit you up first. So Bobby Wagner has come out and he continues to say the defense is close. This is obviously paraphrasing. He's talked about the confidence of the team. He's talked about scheme. He's talked about, do your 111th. That's kind of his phrase that he's been telling people. There are 11 people on the field. Do your 111th. Do you believe Bobby Wagner? This is the captain of the defense. He's been with the team as long as Russ has. He is as much as invested in the team as anyone else. Do you believe that the defense is close, or it's just they're almost there?
I mean, yes and no. How's that about taking a stand? Um, I mean, like last game. I mean, again, I didn't review tons and tons of film. I didn't even rewatch the game in completion. But on our website, hawkscast.net, I mean, like Austin posted a pretty good video. I like that guy. I didn't agree with his analysis. I like the videos though. The guy knows what he's talking about as far as the football terminology. I just don't understand his analysis at all. Since I feel like I'm watching a different play. But the plays that were in that, for example, in that video, I broke down, and I think I talked about them at length in that thread. There are signs that they're very, very close. The long completion to Jackson, I've said this elsewhere, like Stafford's an idiot for throwing that ball. The guy wasn't open. It looked like he had single coverage with Jones there, and it looked like he was going to have plenty of help from the safety. So unless Stafford is like, I mean, this is a huge negative. This is true. Unless Stafford knew, like Jones probably is going to blow this coverage, he's not going to run with him, and he knew that Adams has no ball awareness and no ball skills whatsoever. Unless he knew that ball shouldn't have been thrown. And once it was thrown, that should have been at worst a batted ball and at best an interception by Jamal. I mean, it's the ball's equally, once the ball's in there, it's equally yours. And he's actually in a position where Jamal should be looking at the ball before Jackson even knew it was in the air, because of the angles they were at. And some of the other stuff, some of the other plays, it's, there was like, people were making a big deal that the Rams ran the same play 5 times to the center of the field. And like, oh, well, the Seahawks didn't adjust. They have the right play call every time. They don't need to adjust. Adams needs to move to his left, to the quarterback's right. It's clear. That's the side that's being flooded. That's your responsibility. Your zone doesn't put you in concrete boots in the center of your zone. You're responsible for that entire area, not for standing in the middle of it. So all you have to do is when you see 3 wide receivers over there with none on the left or a tight end only, and you've got your man coverage there, you know that side is going to be flooded, so you move left at the snap, not later on when you see the route. Then if you need to, you can move back again, but you move left at the beginning, at the snap. It's basics. It's 101. There's 3 guys that are flooding your zone. That's where you go if you're the safety in the zone. So if those things can be corrected, then they're close. That's the question, though. They're really, really close. The question is, can you make the adjustments? Like, because I don't know why Adams, after 5 games of this year and 4 years into his career, 5 years into his career, doesn't know to move to his left on a flooded zone when, like, high school kids do that. So, and also it's on Pete. I'm not giving Pete a pass. Like, that's was my criticism on the thread. It's like, I'm not actually defending the play call, like the coaching side. I'm just saying, let's point out the real failings. The real failing is, why is Jamal Adams playing 86% of the time deep safety? It wasn't that high, but it was high. Like, that's not his thing. And the game before, you saw Ryan Neal in coverage doing pretty good things. We have Marquise Blair drafted pretty high, 2nd round, right? It's hard to remember that now, but Marquise Blair's a 2nd rounder, talented dude, and he's got to have, he can do stuff. So if you're going to play deep safety, I know you paid Jamal a lot of money, but that's a sunk cost now. Get him off the field, put Ryan Neal, who's like an undrafted free agent, or put Marquise Blair, 2nd rounder out there. Put them out there. They can play the ball and get the interception. If Jamal can't move to his, like Zoolander, he can't turn left, fine. If Jamal Adams is Zoolander, then let Ryan Neal play. And move Jamal into the box, or don't play him at all. Because in the box, he's special. And yeah, we pay the money, so he should be all around, but you can't force it. Like, that's that's what you want ideally, but you can't force it. So if he's not, he's not. So they could be close. If they make some personnel changes, I mean, Bobby Wagner as well. Like, I mean, he's not making special plays, but fine, he can suck up everything there. Play him a little deeper. It's a lot easier to run forward than backwards. So they look close to me, yes, but at the same time, some of the adjustments they have to make are not adjustments I don't know if they can make because, like I said, Jamal Adams has turned into Zoolander and can't turn left. And for whatever reason, Pete Carroll has weird blinders about when to play Ryan Neal and Marquise Blair. And if they can't overcome their own blinders, then they're not going to. Then good defense is the moon. It's not far away, from my point of view.
Real quick, here's the quote from Bobby. He says, "I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us to step up. I think it's needed. Obviously, with Russell going down, a lot of it's going to fall on Geno to run that offense and do the things we're accustomed to seeing, but we've got to play better. And we have to accept this challenge of getting out of this hole and getting out whatever we dug ourselves into. I feel like we have the people, we have the confidence, we have the players to execute, and we have the players to get this right. So this is our time, our turn to step up as a defense, and we will. It's going to be a personal challenge for me to make sure that happens." Strong words from a guy who is not what I would consider to be a very vocal leader. Like, he's not a Richard Sherman, he's not a Michael Bennett, he's not a Marshawn, obviously Marshawn in a very different way. He's not a Cam Chancellor, but this is pretty strong words coming from your defensive captain, Zeb. Do you believe that they're close?
I mean, I agree with everything Bobby said, and I agree with everything Ross said, 100%.
Yay!
My thing is, being close is great, but unless you eventually do actually get it together, then being close doesn't matter. And we are seeing a lot of issues. So I don't know. This defense historically tends to get better as the season goes on, and I don't think this year is going to be any different. But the level, how much better are they going to get? Are they going to get good enough that we can hold on to some leads and win these games? Because that's where they got to be. It's frustrating, and we were all spoiled for a long time with that world-class defense that we had. But it's been gone for a long time now, and we seem to be having this same conversation every year, or at least a similar one. Is the defense good enough? Are they going to get better? Are they going to be able to get it together at some point? So I'm optimistic, but I don't know. I feel like their ceiling isn't particularly high. So it could be a frustrating season.
If Earl Thomas wasn't insane and had a modicum of communication skills, would you bring him in as a consultant?
No.
I mean, if he actually knew how to speak English and was like I said, coherently, and if it was Earl Thomas's experience and whatever, but Richard Sherman's speaking ability.
I don't think real quick, I don't think that I would with Earl Thomas, and the reason is when I look at Earl Thomas, he is such a unique individual in so many ways. I think it would be hard for him to coach someone else and to tell them to do these things, because Earl Thomas is a freak athlete. He was a top 15 pick for a reason. He was the best safety out of that class. He's a potential Hall of Famer
I don't
for
think
sure.
Quandre Diggs I don't think Quandre Diggs is as good, but I think he's got some of the skills.
He has some of the skills, but to let Zeb get in real quick is, when I look at certain players, when their skill sets are so unique to them, I don't think they can coach other people to do those same things.
I think that Earl Thomas is 100% instinct and emotion, and I don't think that he can. I don't think there's any way that he could teach his skill set to anybody, or you know what I mean. Like Cam, I think Cam would probably be the guy.
Yeah, and Cam has done some coaching for the Seahawks. But to give you a real quick example of Earl Thomas, do you remember one of those crazy runs that Marshawn had in Arizona? I can't remember if it was the second.
It was. You mean what's it called? Beast Quake 2?
Yeah, so it was this crazy run where Marshawn just pushed down 5 people, and they had a sideline camera of Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas nearly outran Marshawn Lynch to the end zone on the sideline. And what Earl Thomas decided to do, instead of shake hands, high five, celebrate with Marshawn. He just like stared him down. Like that's what Earl Thomas decided. You know what? This guy just scored an amazing touchdown. I was watching on the Jumbotron. I had to be involved to celebrate, and all I'm gonna do is stare this dude down.
Well, I mean, that's what I was saying. Like, if he wasn't completely insane.
But that's why I think he's so unique. I don't know if you could really get him to share what other people. It would be like if Michael Jordan, like, all right, I'm going to coach you how to be Michael Jordan. I'm like, dude, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I have one other question for you then.
Okay.
Since we're talking about defense, okay. Do you know that? Okay, we have how many coordinators do the Seahawks have?
They have a defensive coordinator, and then I know they have a position coach, and then they have like one or two like assistants, like analysts that they kind of like do like the grunt work.
They have 6 coordinator level coaches. One of them is a defensive passing game coordinator.
No, that guy needs to get fired.
Do you know who that is? That's Andre Curtis.
Andre Curtis. Is that the guy that was out the first game and they said that was the reason why? No, it was the.
No, that was that maybe I don't know who that was.
It was the Minnesota game. There was a coach that was out in Minnesota, and Shed was the coach that was responsible for communicating with the secondary.
It must be him then. It must be Andre Curtis. So Andre Curtis is our defensive passing game coordinator. Now we've been calling on Ken Norton Jr. for his head. I'm thinking like it's Andre Curtis. I don't want to call him his head, but I'm just saying we haven't given enough attention to him. And then so we have this many people responsible. We've got the defensive passing game coordinator. We have our defensive coordinator, of course, Ken Norton Jr. And then like you were talking about, we specifically have Deshaun Shed as our defensive assistant and DB position guy. So, man, there's some people who need to like be put in some extra time, some overtime these days. Look at all these dudes, all these man. So I remember, Deshaun Shed,
Aaron Curry is on the staff.
Yeah, Kerry Joseph is our assistant wide receivers coach, which is interesting.
Huh. Wasn't he a secondary guy?
Yeah, he was a DB.
Yeah. But that happens a lot. Actually, a lot of DBs actually really work out well as wide receiver coaches because they know what they were defending. Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember Nolan Cromwell.
Yeah.
He was a defensive back for the Rams when I was a kid, and he was like an all-pro. And he became one of the best wide receiver coaches ever. So
probably teaching them how to cheat.
Yeah. Anyway, I think, not to call people out, but some people just need to be called out. Yeah. I just wanted to get Andre Curtis' name out there too. Experienced 15 years. You know me. I'm not one of those people. I don't really generally like to call for people's jobs because that's. But like even Ken Norton Jr., I don't want him fired. I want him to like a shift in responsibilities. Boxing gym outreach program or something. I don't know.
We're gonna move ahead, but to give my final thoughts on Bobby Wagner, show me that you're not just thinking that you're close, not that you're practicing like you're close. Show me that you can put an entire football game of defense because they had a 2-point deficit that they needed one stop, and the Rams just marched down the field. They got the stop after the Rams scored, and Seattle could have maybe had a miracle before the interception. But no, I need the defense to show up in much more timely ways, not when it's a 2-score lead. I need you to play defense. I need you to get that, 3 and out exactly when the team is within a score. And until I see that, it doesn't matter. I love Bobby. I love Bobby for what he is and what he's done. But this year, show me, and then I'll believe. I can't give them the benefit of the doubt at this time.
No more benefits of the doubts. It's been going on for 4 years, especially the past 2 years. There's no more benefit of the doubts.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Topic number 3. So this is topic number 3. This is the Hawks Cast Corner. And we're going outside of the Seahawks, but we are talking about football still. Zeb, Jon Gruden was fired for comments he made at ESPN while doing the Monday night broadcast. Is the NFL trying to send a message? For those of that you are not aware, Jon Gruden is the former Monday night color commentator on ESPN. He was until this week the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, formerly the Oakland Raiders, and a bunch of emails came out where he used very, very, very offensive words. Depending on where you fall in the offensive spectrum, it maybe wasn't a big deal, but it's definitely not something the NFL wants to be associated with. And he resigned in shame. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers kicked him out of their Hall of Ring of Honor, which again, that should have been Tony Dungy's Ring of Honor and his Super Bowl trophy, but that's another story. Zeb, is the NFL trying to send a message by making an example of Jon Gruden?
So there's a lot of moving parts to this whole thing, right? Like, and I've been reading some interesting thoughts and some conspiracy theory type stuff that I don't really want to get into. But the fact that this all comes from an investigation into the Washington football team organization is kind of interesting to me. He was not the target of this investigation. Just the stuff, some of the things that he said came out because of this investigation, and the fact that some of the things he said were in regards to Commissioner Goodell. That kind of makes me feel like somebody felt some kind of way about something, and that maybe he was targeted in a sense, or they're trying to make an example out of him to some degree. But I don't know. Like there's too much behind the scenes that I don't know about to really be able to make any kind of formal decision on how I feel about it.
Give me your QAnon approach to this story.
I honestly don't know enough about what's going on with the Washington organization and the investigation. I don't really know what's going on there. I haven't been keeping up on it. This Gruden news was, a huge surprise to me when it came out.
Do you, if you were in the NFL or if you were Mark Davis and you owned the Raiders, would you want Gruden to resign over what was said in those emails?
I mean, okay, so this whole idea, this whole concept, people like to use the phrase cancel culture, though I don't know that that's necessarily something. I don't know. I don't really know what that means. When somebody gets caught saying something that's inappropriate, especially in maybe a professional environment, from the position of leadership, then I think people have no choice but to make some of those decisions. Like, I don't know. I don't think any of us know everything Jon Gruden has said. We've heard little pieces here and there. There's been some things pointed out that were racially insensitive. He insulted the commissioner, which I think is probably a big reason why this may have come down quicker on him than it would have otherwise. Maybe there'd been more investigation into it, but he insulted Roger, and he used some words that I think in our society are just blatantly unacceptable to use. And like I said, coming in a professional environment and from a position of leadership, I don't think anybody had any choice but to separate themselves from him. Now, taking him out of the Ring of Honor and removing him from a video game, like removing his likeness from the video game is, I don't know. That could be, if you look at the grand scheme of things, like in a couple of years, we're all going to forget about this for the most part. You know what I mean? I don't know what's in Jon Gruden's heart. I don't know what kind of guy he is, but he screwed up, and so he has to be held accountable for it. And I think losing his job as the head coach of the Raiders is the obvious one. Now, all the other stuff that's involved, it's up to the people who are in charge of those things to decide what to do with those. But it's a lesson. Although we're taught, we learn this lesson over and over and over again, right? Like, don't say shit you shouldn't say because especially now in the age of the internet, it's there. It's forever. Somebody is going to find it. So you just, you need to. He said some unacceptable things, in my opinion, and so he deserves to be fired for it, or resign, or whatever you want to call it. But
yeah.
I don't know. There's so much going on. I assume we'll learn more as it goes, but it sucks. So rest in peace, Jon Gruden.
Ross, where are you in this Jon Gruden story?
I'm still in Tokyo.
Yeah, good. Glad to know you haven't left. Good to know that Godzilla hasn't gotten you yet.
It's funny because it's not funny. It's interesting because I suspect whoever is leaking it, that person and I could have a long conversation in a bar and disagree on a lot, because it feels like the structure of the leaks indicates that some of the things that person thinks are the worst are, to me, the most understandable. Like in 2011 and 2014, Gruden doesn't work for the NFL. He doesn't like Goodell is not his boss and is not his authority and is nothing. And his point, not what he said, not his word choice, his point is not anything that I don't think you and I didn't talk about at the time. But I didn't say. Like, I don't like the fact that they've taken some of those hits out of the game. I don't like the fact that they've taken away kickoffs from being a part of the game because people get hurt. I don't like the emphasis on, the sort of hit job on the concussions. Yes, concussions are real. But, anyway, the point of view is... Anyway, my point is, there are some things that he said that actually, he's right. Now, his word choice on those issues, like I'm talking about, and he chose to call it, I'm going to use the word once, the pacification of the game. Okay, he's a 59-year-old dude, and he's in the sports world, and it's a dude talking to his friend. Now, I get now that by calling something the P word, that's now considered misogynistic, because that means that you're equating that word with weakness and things like that. And you know what? Like, the average dude could not give birth. They can't handle that pain. We know women are tough in their own way, and men are tough in a different way. And all human beings, compared to most other animals, are pretty goddamn tough. So, yay us. I'm not so much... I know that culture's moved on, and we're not supposed to use that word. I do think that word, though, is still going to get thrown away around a bit more. And I'm not necessarily sure that's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, because we do still... Because it's not meant to call them weak. It's talking about femininity and things like that. It's very, very political. And maybe even I'm a dinosaur. I'm 50 in a couple months. Maybe my, my sense generation is going to be better about this. So that word itself, when you understand that it's private males, not about his boss, talking about a real issue in an issue that affected his livelihood. If football becomes less interesting, then there's less demand. At that time, he was a broadcaster. I'm okay. I'm not happy, and it's not how I talk. But that particular word choice, I guess I just don't feel as bad about. Now, the F word, and not the FU one, the other one, the one I'm
what people in the UK call cigarettes.
Yeah, the code name for the MiG-15 for you pilot people out there, the MiG-15 Korean War Soviet airplane, North Korean airplane. That word, and this is exactly why I think that it's just. That word is so offensive, and if that's essentially close to the N word, and that's a thing. Like, even if and it's a different level. It really is, because the other one is something we've decided to open our consciousness about and realize that some of our words are hurtful. The other one is purposefully hurtful. That's the difference, right? We've decided, referring to things as pussification or being a pussy, whatever, we've decided that that's bad because, again, the implication is then that women are weaker. You have to take that extra step and realize what it's supposed to be. The other words are meant to be harmful. They're meant to hurt you. They're disparaging from the beginning. That's their whole intent. And you've got a dude on your team now, on the Las Vegas. I said it right. Las Vegas Raiders have an openly gay player, I believe.
Yes.
And again, like if that word's even in your vocabulary, like, dude, that's not right. And yeah, you lose your privileges if that's what we know about you now. Nobody is going to respect you anymore. Nobody's going to look at you as like as somebody who deserves respect, who deserves a position of respect. You can't lead men. You can't lead men in a locker room when one of those men is somebody you've referred to that way. You can't. So yeah, he needs to be out. That doesn't mean I'm absolutely, completely horrified that the word got used, but it speaks a lot about you, and that's not somebody I want to be around. I mean, classic case. Like I've given up friends who talk like that. I've had people who were my friends, and then they never use that word around me, and then I've met them in a different situation. I found out that they do use that word. And this isn't just like, oh, well, it's locker talk or it's taco guys. Like, I've got guy friends. I've spent a lot of time in those kind of situations, too. That's never been in my vocabulary. I've never, ever, ever. And again, I will even say, when I was a teenager, because of my own particular background and my particular experiences and my particular age as well, I was probably, like, homophobic. Not like, oh, my God, I hate gay people. But I didn't understand it, and I had some uncomfortable. But even then, like, you can be uncomfortable with something but still be civil about it and still be respectful. I went to, I did my undergrad in the Bay Area, and I grew out of that stuff rather quickly because I met gay people. And I educated myself purposefully. And I have other issues. Like, I've had to deal with them. But again, it's all about civility. And it's not, I don't like the excuse, like, oh, well, you grew up in the sports world. Like, that's not an excuse. Do we really believe that Matt Hasselbeck talks that way in private? I bet you he doesn't. Are there some people who probably do? What's that dude that's always in trouble? The guard got in trouble.
Rich Incognito?
Yeah. You know what? That's if I wouldn't be surprised if it's in that dude's emails. But again, like, yeah, it's private conversation. It's not like he posted on the social media, so it's there forever. But it's still like, if that's how you talk privately, if that's who you are, and that wasn't like when these aren't mails from when he was 12. He was an adult man, and it wasn't that long ago. And then I saw other people saying, well, it was a different time. No, it wasn't. 2011 to 2021 is not that different. Like, it wasn't acceptable then. If it was like 1994, I'd be like, okay. I mean, I go back and watch some Friends episodes from 1994, and I'm like, or 1995, and like, it's a little cringeworthy now. 2011 was not that different, except for the fact that the U.S. was still kind of sane.
Kind of.
And I've gone on a little too long on the topic, but I'm just saying, like, there's different levels to the thing, but like how we talked about Smith, yeah, I mean, like, if that's how you see people, then that speaks to you. That's in your heart. That's in your heart, man. You can't deny that. You wrote that in your private discourse. And by the way, I don't want to give Mr. Allen of the Washington football team, Bruce Allen. I don't want to give him a pass because what Jon Gruden did deserves him to be fired. Bruce Allen, he needs to be charged with crimes, right? Like his role literally is criminal. Like, for example, he passed nude photos, topless photos of Washington cheerleaders, illegally obtained, no permission there, and shared them with other people. That's a crime. And you know what? Like, charge that dude. Because you're running a football franchise, and if people can't work for you and trust that you're going to respect their privacy, their rights, then how are you going to run a football team? How is that not illegal? How are you allowed? I can't do that. I can't go up and as a middle class dude, I can't go to my neighbor's house and take a picture of them naked without their permission and then share without being charged. That's what that did do. It doesn't matter if he owns the team. That's a crime. It's a real crime, and he's in a position to commit the crime over and over and over again. So he needs to be in a position that he can't be. That dude needs to be charged. So, sorry, not owns, but rather managed at the time, rather.
Yeah.
Sorry for speaking there, but I mean, anyway, as far as is it a hatchet job or the NFL? Like, probably, I guess I was just counting that earlier. It just sounds to me. I don't think it's because he insulted the commissioner. I'm just thinking, read everything there, see how. Like, I've always hated the dude. Oh, Chucky, shut the fuck up. I don't understand the obsession with people like everything having to be hardcore. Like bullshit. Like, if you read those emails and you talk about his public persona, it's not a big leap to realize this guy is an ass and he's got enemies. There are people he's rubbed the wrong way probably his entire career. People who value civility, who value manners, that other people, especially in America, feels like these days, like those are like bad words or silly things. But you know what? That's what makes us human. That's what rises us up above the animals. Manners, civility, being kind to others, making your point in an articulate way, not racist, not racially, not with other disparaging that level of comments. He's clearly made enemies. And I really don't think it's an NFL league because everything in there is apparently available in a lawsuit in India. So some lawyers have read this stuff. And some of the lawyers who had dealings with Jon Gruden are pissed off and took out some of the, what do they call it? I just forgot the word. I use the word
retractions?
all the time. Like when you black out a part
The retractions.
Yeah. We're able to disable that and released it because it's all stuff from the lawsuits in India that we're talking about liability and defamation.
Yeah.
So it's some lawyer who's pissed off because John in the sports world because Jon Gruden I'm sure has made tons of enemies because he's a dick.
Yeah.
So that's the end of my rant.
To kind of wrap up this topic because we're a little bit long-winded. I think I made my opinions on Jon Gruden very clear when I talked about Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy is the quote-unquote class act of the NFL. He was potentially rumored to even come to Seattle at one point. That was his team that won a Super Bowl. Jon Gruden stole a Super Bowl from Tony Dungy. I don't like the Buccaneers as an organization. I think they're a bad organization. I don't like their owner. I don't like a lot of things that have happened in that world. I don't think Jon Gruden's necessarily even a great coach. So the fact that he got this opportunity again, I thought that was also dumb. I don't feel bad for Jon Gruden at all. I think he deserves everything that he got because it was his actions. Whether they were private or not, those are the things he said. Those are the things he thought. And it caught up with him. I don't feel bad when people that have that lack of civility and they get exposed for it, that they lose their job. I have no sympathy because it's not hard to be civil. You don't have to call every single person you meet a derogatory name, a slur, a euphemism for, genitalia to explain how you feel about them. I talked about this on the forum. Someone asked, is calling someone a pussy a slur? And it's like, yeah, it is, because you're trying to demean them in a way that says this thing is bad, therefore you are bad. Just call him an idiot. No one is offended when an asshole is referenced as an asshole. That's a universal phrase. That's not sexist. There's no way that people can misconstrue what that means. It's a very clear way to insult someone, and everyone takes it as an insult, as it is intended. No one else outside of that realm says, you really shouldn't use that word. So I don't feel bad for Jon Gruden. I
have a question, though.
Well, let me finish up, and then I'll let you get your question in. I do think that this is a hit job. Maybe kind of like what Ross said. Someone out there is really upset with Jon Gruden and wanted him to get in trouble. But I think that there is someone out there that has a lot more details linked to the Washington football team, linked to Jon Gruden, linked to Bruce Allen, linked to all these people. And there is going to be a lot more information that's going to come out, and it is going to hit the NFL hard. And I think the NFL is trying to get in front of it as best they can, because I don't know how worse it could be. I don't think that this is just the worst. This is not the bottom of the barrel. This is just the beginning, and I expect things to get much, much worse for the NFL and anyone else caught up in this behavior, in these emails, in this kind of conduct. Ross, you had a question?
No, let it pass.
All right. Well, we're gonna push ahead. We got one more topic, and we're a little bit long. really long, but it's topic number 4. And topic number 4, Ross, are the Steelers the AFC clone of the Seahawks? So to give some people some context, Mike Tomlin, a defensive-minded coaching background, coordinators who call the plays, not the head coach. They drafted a running back in the first round. They rely on a boom or bust quarterback. They went 12-4 in 2020. Are these Steelers kind of like a Seattle Seahawks clone?
It's more like a Bizarro, like in the movie's evil twin version, right? Where you look the same.
The goatee. They have the evil goatee.
They've got a goatee and a little mustache, and like their hat's a different color. I guess.
Wario.
Yeah.
I see it, but I think it's really misleading to look at it that way. I don't know. I'd have to think on that, man. Like, that's interesting. They have made, but I mean, it feels like it's superficial. Like, they rely on their quarterback, but their quarterback has been on the decline for years, whereas ours is, in theory, perhaps in his prime or his second kind of prime, because he's a different player than when he was like young Russ. And they drafted a guy in the first round to be the running back too, because they desperately had to, whereas ours was seen as like a luxury because we didn't have to, and it wasn't to replace, it wasn't to be the guy, it was because we have injuries and we needed to help the guy. And again, I've talked about this elsewhere. I don't really like at some stage in people's careers labeling coaches who are head coaches as sort of defensive or offensive anymore, because I think it's misleading. Like, if you're a coach that's a defensive coach, that means almost like you don't know anything about offense practically. You have to bring an offensive coordinator and you just hand him the reins. That's what I see as a classic one. But when you get to even Tomlin's stage in his career, you've developed your own ideas and you have your ideas, at least a philosophy of what the offense should look like. And you're not as hands-on with the defense either. Like, I don't like it when Pete Carroll, like Bill Belichick is called a defensive coach, but like, when's the last time the Patriots had a really, really good defense? They haven't. I mean, they've had really good both sides, or above average on both sides, and just been well coached. I mean, like, at some point you outgrow the label. So I don't really like that label from Pete Carroll or from Mike Tomlin, to be honest. At this point, that's how they came up, but not exclusively. I mean, Pete Carroll's also coached special teams and blah blah blah. Same with Bill Belichick. Anyway, I don't really see them as a clone. I see them as like a through the looking glass kind of thing. You can see the similarities, but in many ways we're opposite, right? They're not. I mean, the Seattle is sort of the wave of the future and is known for embracing newness and all sorts of extra things and treatments and philosophies, and players are allowed to speak out and players be themselves, and it's where you come for that kind of experience. And the Steelers it's not like Bill Belichick's Patriots, but you don't go there to be yourself, right? You go there to be part of the Steelers cog machine, and they're just that old school hard grinding team. Yeah, like I said, I see it was more like a mirror image rather than a clone.
Bizarro clone then.
Unclone.
Okay, Zeb, what about you? Like, I'll just be frank. This is a team that we normally only see once every 4 years. The last time we saw them, it was in Seattle. Doug Baldwin went off. He had like 3 touchdowns against the Steelers that game. It was a great game. Are these Steelers kind of like a mirror image, a Bizarro, a Wario of our Mario?
A Garth Knight.
Yeah.
There's definitely similarities. You guys point out quite a bit of them. That's there's no denying that. And interestingly, the history of these two teams has been a pretty good back and forth. The Seahawks are 10-9 all time against the Steelers. Obviously, we all know that it should be 11-8.
Yes,
but it stands at 10-9 as it is, and we've just basically swapped with them all throughout the history of the two teams. Loss, win, loss, win, loss, win. So, unfortunately for us, we've won the last two. And if you remove just that Super Bowl, no team has won 3 in a row against the other. So take that for what it's worth. I think that what I want more than anything is for Ben Roethlisberger to retire and disappear and never have to see his face or hear his name again.
Yes, please.
I'd be down for that.
He's one of about 3 guys that I think after this season, it's time, move on, go away. I don't hate the Steelers like I once did, but I think with him gone, that's pretty much the last remnant of that, and I can move forward and I can appreciate watching them against their AFC North rivals because now I just to this day I still can't. I just find myself rooting against them. One thing I admire about the Steelers that we've had a hard time doing in Seattle is they are not afraid to let their stars walk. Especially if you look at like their wide receivers. They just, if a guy wants to go, a guy can go. They've let countless top-tier talent, the Patriots in a sense, where they're not going to give a guy a huge contract. We're going to find somebody in the draft, and they seem to draft fairly well. So I'm a bit envious in that aspect, and I wish that were more one of our similarities because it's been a little rough in that aspect around here lately.
Yeah, the Steelers are an interesting team because we have that Super Bowl relationship with them, and obviously anyone who watched that Super Bowl live, if you're not a Steelers fan, a majority of the nation believes that the Seahawks were robbed, that the head referee, the official for that game, said that he kicked a bunch of calls. Like, that's a rarity. Like, you rarely hear officials say that they messed up in such a marquee game. I think there are a lot of similarities in the Steelers in the fact that their coach has been with the team forever. He's been their head coach this is his 15th year. I think only Bill Belichick is been with his team longer. Obviously, Pete Carroll's is shorter than that. It doesn't feel like it's that much shorter, but, Mike Tomlin has been the head coach of the Steelers since 2007. He hasn't won a playoff game since 2016, so he's only been to the playoffs twice in the 4 years after his last playoff win. So there's a lot of similarities, but what I think is very clear is the ownership of the Steelers does not like turmoil. They do not like change at that key position. I think they only have like 5 head coaches in their entire history, and every coach has been there for, I want to say, close to a decade. Seahawks haven't had that kind of fortune. We've only had 3 coaches that are of note, and only one of them has won a Super Bowl. Whereas the Steelers, that's they have 3 different head coaches that have won a Super Bowl. So there's definitely those similarities, but I think what we're going to see on Sunday is these are 2-3 teams, and I still think that people think that this Seahawks team with Geno Smith, it's going to be a competitive game, and they expect it to be close. And I think that's a really bad sign for the Steelers. The fact that a backup quarterback is going to come into their stadium on Sunday night and give him a chance, that's a bad sign. Like right now, I'm looking at it. The line is -5 for the Steelers, so they're a 5-point favorite for this game, which that's pretty good line. That's a lot of points that they have to win by. But you'd think it'd be higher. So I don't know.
3 points is because you're home team, so
right.
That's 2 points. That's on a neutral field. They think the Steelers with Big Ben and all those dudes are 2 points better than us.
Yeah. You look at the stats. They're 21st in passing. Seahawks are 16th. That's obviously going to even out a little bit more. The Seahawks, surprisingly, are 19th in rushing, and the Steelers are 31st. So pour out any for anyone that drafted Najee Harris really high. Points per game, we're 13th at 24. They're 27th with 18.8. You know, the defense is a lot better, but that's doesn't really matter if if your team is still 2-3. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think it'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, it's weird to see how the Steelers and the Seahawks, how their history is intertwining still at this point. You know, so many years later after that Super Bowl.
It's almost funny. It's almost eerie. We've shut them out twice. They've shut us out twice. It's just been so back and forth over the years. It's uncanny.
Here's the closing thing I want to talk about the Steelers. Last year they started 11-0, 11 wins in a row. They ended their season 12-4. They went 1-4 in their last 5 games. That is terrible. I mean, I think Seahawks fans are beating themselves over after finishing 12-4 when they started 5-0. But man, could you imagine going 11-0 and only winning one more game? That is terrible.
I can kind of imagine because we've started 8-2 and finished 9-7. So.
Ooh, that hurts. I remember that was Holmgren's first year.
That was rough.
That was a rough one. I thought we were destined for greatness, but you know.
That was the year I followed them around for a month. Watching when they were 8-2, I think they were like 7-1 or something. When I something like that, I was already living in Japan. For the first time in my life, I had like a salary, so I had a little bit of money. So I decided to take a month off, and I followed them around, thinking they were just going to dominate. And they lost 3 of the 4 games I went to.
Ooh, rough.
I went to a game in Denver where my hot chocolate froze.
Oh, no.
Game. It was awful.
Oh.
Awful trip. Anyway.
All right. Well, those are our topics. We obviously went a little bit long, but thank you for sticking with us. We do have some predictions that we're going to go through. So last week, we all predicted the Seahawks win. Ross had a 31-28 win. Zeb had a 34-26 win. I had a 27-20 win. Obviously, none of us were right, so that's a wash for today.
I got the 26 right.
That is true. That is true. But it was for the wrong team, I believe.
No, I predicted that's what they would score, the Rams.
You know? Oh, yeah, that's right. That is true. Never mind. I apologize. I'm looking at.
We didn't score nearly enough points.
Yeah, you're a little short on that one, Zeb.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, we're gonna kick things off. Ross, you're gonna go first. What is the final score? Seahawks at the Steelers on Sunday night.
28-27 Steelers.
Okay. Zeb.
27-24 Seahawks.
Ooh. I don't believe in these teams in like the different reasons, so I'm gonna go 20.
They actually do exist.
I know, but I don't believe in their talent, I should say. I'm going to say the Steelers don't cover, but they're going to win 21-17. Zeb, who's going to have more Ross, who's going to have more touchdowns, Geno or Ben?
Ben.
Zeb?
Geno.
I do think Geno's going to get more touchdowns. Geno's going to get more touchdowns than Ben in a loss. Who's going to get more carries? Is it going to be Chris Carson or Najee Harris? Ross.
Isaiah.
Najee's
like the man for them, right? We share carries around, so it's got to be him.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be Harris.
You know, Chris Carson is healthy. He's practicing. Whatever neck issue he's got, it's a little bit better. If the Seahawks want to win, Carson needs to be involved. He's really the only running back I have any hope in. And I think that they're going to try and ride him hard, and he's going to get more carries than Harris will. Who's going to have more sacks, Ross? The Seahawks defense or TJ Watt? TJ Watt has 4 sacks right now. The Seahawks and the Steelers as a whole have 10 total sacks.
Doesn't Daryl Taylor have 4 sacks?
Darrell Taylor has 4 sacks in 5 games.
So it's going to be us.
Okay.
Yeah, God, we never sack Ben. But yeah, this week we will. I'm with it. Us.
Yeah, Ben has those like meat sweats, so he gets like real slippery, and we can't ever get him down. But I think the Seahawks defense will have more sacks than TJ Watt will, so I'm going to go with the Seahawks defense. Ross, over under 10.5 targets for one Mr. DK Metcalf. He's averaging about just under 8.
Under.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to run the ball a lot. I think we think we have to run the ball.
Zeb.
Yeah, under. Everett's going to be back too, right? So
Yeah, Everett's back from COVID, finally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go over. I think Geno and DK are gonna hook up, and I think that's gonna be his go-to. It's not gonna be like tons of deep shots, but I think slants are gonna open up for DK, and I think he's gonna get more than his fair share, more than 10.5 targets. Ross, over under 1.5 mentions from Super Bowl 40.
I think that's kind of faded out lately. Under, definitely under.
yeah, I think we did this last time, and we all picked over, and it didn't happen. So I'm going to go under.
I should change the odds, but yeah, we're so far removed. There's so few ties to that team and this team. There's so many better topics to reference. I'm going to go under as well. Ross, over under 4.5 blitzes for Jamal Adams. They have not been blitzing him a lot this year.
My head says under, but I'm hoping they just kind of simplified things this week, and they put Ryan in coverage, and he blitzes permanently. Over.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with Ross. It has to happen. We need to use him that way, so I'm going over.
It's kind of a heart versus head here, and my heart wants Jamal to blitz more, but my head says that they're not. So I'm gonna go under. I don't think they're gonna pull that move yet, unless they decide to make a huge change. The final prediction for the evening. Ross, what's more likely to happen first for Jamal, a sack or an interception?
Neither.
You got to pick one.
Sack.
Okay.
Sack.
Yes, I mean a sack is pretty obviously more likely.
I think the sack is more likely, but I'm going to go in the opposite. I'm going to say the interception because I don't think they're going to blitz Jamal a lot. He's going to play coverage. Ben's already given up the ball 4 times in the air so far. Who's to say he can't do it?
I honestly think he'll have more opportunities than interceptions. I just think that dude has no ball skills, can't catch. Yeah, no ball awareness. I just don't. I think the opportunities. If you ask me the opportunity, he'll have an opportunity for an interception first, but he'll actually get the sack because he apparently lives for that.
Fair enough. I mean, that reminds me of one Bruce Irvin who said that he would trade all of his fumble or interceptions for touchdowns that he's had for sacks because the dude just loves to sack quarterbacks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sack him.
Gentlemen, that is our show for this evening. Time for some shout-outs.
Dude, shout out to you guys and to Birdfinger. You guys are all badass in my opinion.
Shout out to Daniel Craig. I watched his last Bond movie. I don't think it up to the other ones, but it was pretty good. First movie I saw in a theater in 19 months.
Nice. All right. I might check it out. We are the Hawkscast.net podcast. You can find us on Twitter. I'm at SamC521. Zeb is at Zebulon Dak. Ross is at Better Than More. You can follow our Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. We have a website. It's called Hawkscast.net. A lot of really fun topics. Shout out to all the people that are on Hawkscast right now. Birdfinger, Stone Cold, Chris, SCH, Austin, Known One, Kiwi Hawk, Cyrus. Go to Hawkscast.net. It's a really fun group. P-Hawk is there. He's got a label. No one has caught it yet. Please go check out P-Hawk and what his label is on Hawkscast. It is beautiful. We are the Hawkscast.net podcast, and we wish you all a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.